welcome back to the Middling Along podcast. I'm your host, Emma Thomas, founder of Managing the Menopause and the Triple Shift. My guest today is Hannah Miller. Hannah is the founder of Sidekick and creator of the Purpose Pursuit course and book, which is mainly what we'll be talking about today. An award-winning speaker, author, podcast host, and accredited coach, she helps people and organisations uncover strengths, navigate change, and pursue purpose. With a background in teaching and business, Hannah combines practical insight with a personal approach to leadership and self-development. Through Sidekick, she delivers coaching, workshops, and resources across corporate, charity, and individual settings, all rooted in the value of brave generosity. 10% of sales go to causes creating a fairer world, and her work has been featured in Marie Claire, BBC, and iPaper. She's also the proud recipient of the Vistage, I hope I'm saying that right, Speaker of the Year Award, Vistage Rising Star Award, and the Outperformer Award in 2022 and 2023. Welcome to the podcast, Hannah.
Thank you. Who is that person? I don't know whether I recognise it. That sounded, different.
Very purposeful.
Yes. Thank you for having me. It's so good to finally get to be on here with you, Emma.
Oh, well, congratulations on the book. You'll have to imagine me holding up a copy of it because I've only had a virtual copy. Thank you very much for that. So Hannah is holding up her own copy.
But yeah, we haven't got physical copies just yet. This is the only one. The one in front of me is the only one I have.
Don't let the dog eat it.
No, I carry it around in a plastic bag. Like I've got a little Ziploc bag because I'm such a messy person. I've got this little Ziploc bag and it goes everywhere with me in that so that I try and look after it at least until we've got a backup copy.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations. I'm always in awe of people who are together enough to write a book and get it published. So maybe one day that will be me. I'm not sure.
I hope so. But together enough is an interesting phrase. It's been quite a challenge, and it still feels so surreal, Emma. Like it's not really happening, even though I'm holding it in my hand. But at the time of us recording this, there's 4 weeks to go. 4 weeks today, it will be in the wild. You know, people will be able to see it.
Out there in the world. Well, I always congratulate people when it's their book birthday and they're sort of talking about, it's a year since I published my book, because I can feel it is like another child, isn't it?
It feels very much like that. It was a definite birthing process for sure.
So without the pain relief.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Well, Hannah, we'll get into talking about your book in a minute, but perhaps it would be interesting to kind of go back and talk about your own pivot. You know, we quite often talk on the podcast about kind of people's squiggly career journeys and pivots. So you were a teacher.
I was. Do you want to hear a little bit about that? So
I'd love to.
Well, in short, whenever anybody like me says in short, it's about to be long. In fact, I listened to a voice note the other day that I'd sent to my sister because I was looking for something in it. And I said to her, I'll spare you the details. And then I gave her all of the details. So that's very me. I left university with a business and marketing degree, and I actually started in advertising. Very quickly, I had this sort of small epiphany that I wasn't sure it was quite the right place for me. I'd really thought it would be. Honestly, I'd worked towards that, and it just wasn't quite the right fit. I couldn't quite tangibly say, but I wasn't sure. I ended up getting a role involved in the startup of a charity. So I got involved there, which involved me having some school connection. So again, this meandering journey of self-discovery. I was in schools doing a bit of work and thought I actually like this process of communicating to groups of people. I like teaching. I like to see people make progress. So at that point, I teacher trained. And then spent the next decade of my working career both having my children. So I've got 3 sons who are now 17, 19 and 22. So this was in the little years. I worked in different schools, but one school I worked in for a long time, which was in more inner city Birmingham with a lot of deprivation. And when I started working there, it was a school that was special measures, pretty much special measures. And we had a really big job on our hands as a leadership team, and I'm really proud to have been part of that school. I loved what we did. I loved the children. I really felt what we did made a difference every day, and that school is an outstanding school now in the city. And I left there 13 years ago now, something like that. A good 10 years ago. I can't remember exactly. I've lost track of my whole life, but it was about 10 years ago. And the reason I made a pivot was not because, and I think this is important, some people make pivots because they realize they're doing something that is not the right thing for them and they're in the wrong fit, I actually loved a lot of what I was doing. But there were two things that kind of brought it, well, maybe three things that brought it to a head for me. One was I had a very difficult year. It was one of those years where I've kind of having again now, actually, Emma, a decade or so later. It was a year of a lot of loss, a lot of change, a lot of difficult stuff all happened within that kind of 12-month process. And when you're going through the stuff of life that happens, there are years when you do have more difficult years. And I think I started to reassess and question things in the light of some of my state of mind and my circumstance. So that was one thing that happened. My workplace honestly became quite a difficult place to work. So there was a situational factor that things changed. I didn't feel like I used to. I wasn't sure that anymore I was getting to use my strengths in the way that I had done previously. And I began to think, I either have to look for another place to go do this, or maybe it's time to do something similar but different, use those strengths and skills that I have. So I didn't fall out of love with teaching, and I would never be one of these people that says, don't be a teacher. Actually, it's one of the most amazing jobs in the world. I would encourage my sons to be teachers. It's hard, but it's amazing. And I recognise I'm a few years out of the system as I say this. But what I recognised is I didn't want to be, I was an assistant head and I didn't want to be a head teacher. I didn't think that was the right thing for me. And so what was I going to do to keep myself feeling like I was being challenged? So I decided to take what I'd learned about myself, and hopefully this is the bit that is useful to others, to take those threads of knowledge that I'm a good communicator. I like to see people make progress. I'm good at figuring people out. And how can I maybe use that in another context? And so essentially, I feel like I moved context rather than completely redesigned my life. And I think some of the things that I learned during that period have really served me well in this completely different setting of having my own business, working with lots of different organizations of sizes and stages, and not so much with children. And that's kind of what happened. And so I'm 10 years down the line of having my own business now, and love what I do, love especially having the opportunity to see people discover more of who they are and make decisions to live that out more effectively in their everyday, normal, ordinary life. I've got a very extraordinary, ordinary life, really. That's how I would describe it. And I would love to see people feel like that about their lives. That's quite a long answer, but there's a lot in it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, don't apologise. I'm always kind of fascinated by that kind of journey of how people go from A to B via X, Y, Z.
And I think I would like to say to people as well that I didn't have a master plan. It wasn't a master plan. And I didn't have, I suppose you've always got, I always say to people now, what's the worst that could happen when you make a change? The worst that could happen is you realise it's not working and it's not right, and you have to go again. And I think I felt perhaps desperate enough and ready enough, and I had a husband who's quite good with risk, to say, just go, let's just go for it, knowing that there is always something out there. If it doesn't work out, there are things we can do. And I think I decided to not worry about the failure thing, and I didn't have a master plan, and to just give it a go anyway. I think that's important for people to know, because I think otherwise they think, you've mapped out this journey and it was all solid and it was all sorted. And honestly, I promise you, it wasn't. Things became clearer as I did it.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely resonates with me. I'm kind of very much did not have a plan when I took redundancy and decided to sort of set up on my own, and lots of kind of figuring stuff out as you go. But so what made you decide specifically to kind of hone in on purpose? Because we know it's something that I think especially around sort of this midlife time when we're doing a lot of questioning, people are really kind of thinking about what is my purpose, what am I here to do, what am I going to do with if I'm lucky enough to have another 50 years on this planet, what is it that I actually want to be doing?
And that is again a really great question. I think as cheesy as this sounds, I feel like the whole purpose question sort of found me. So what happened was, When I started off in my business, I became qualified in working with strengths, which is a whole philosophy of helping people discover what they do best as a route to self-understanding, being a better leader, making better choices, self-awareness, all of that. So that's where it started. And again, going back to what I was saying, things evolve and grow and things happen, don't they, sometimes, that you find yourself, I'm sure you've got plenty of your own stories of, oh, I'd never imagined I'd be doing that and here I am. So a few years down the line was when the pandemic hit us. And a lot of the work I'd been doing up until that point kind of stopped. People panicked. We weren't doing face-to-face things. I'd never done a Zoom workshop at that point. I do loads of them all the time now, but at that point I hadn't. So a lot of what I'd done in those first few years of my business came to a natural halt, which was quite nerve-wracking for me because that was my source of income. And actually, I remember being really deeply upset and grieving that perhaps my business was not going to make it. Now, what then happened was two things. One was a friend of mine who's also a strengths coach had a bit of a pep talk with me and said, right, it's practicing what you preach. You need to do what you're best at. That is communicating, encouraging, doing the thing that you're good at. So I started putting out these little short videos around using your strengths in difficult times, which everybody was in a difficult time. And people started watching them and people started sharing them. And Gallup, the company that I trained with, interviewed me about it. And there started to be just a little bit of momentum. And then I thought, well, maybe I can do this thing where, I do a bit more on camera and so on. Then what happened is quite a lot of people who I'd worked with in different companies were all having, as we all were at the same time, different varying levels of existential crises. And what is the as well as the natural ones that come along in middling moments, is you'd also got people all over the place suddenly going, what's the meaning of all this? Do I really want to do what I've been doing? It's time to reassess. Do I want my life to look like it used to look, or do I want it to look different post-pandemic? So lots of people approach me for coaching in that area, purpose type coaching.
Sure.
So off the back of that, this is genuinely what happened. I was on holiday in France. We were camping in France. It was when you were actually, there was that little period of time where you were actually allowed to travel. And we went camping in France. And I sent a voice note to a friend called James, who was furloughed at the time. And he was living with us as a lodger. He wasn't on holiday with us, but living with us. And he'd been furloughed from work. Operational genius, James is, okay? And I sent him this message going, James, I've had an idea. I'm doing so much purpose coaching. Why don't we make a digital course? I've got no money. Will you help me? You're furloughed. And if we make any money, I'll share some with you, if you help me. I don't know what will happen, but I'd love to get this done. Now is the time. We're at home. We can't do anything else. That voice note idea, he then said, all right, then I may as well. I've got nothing else to do, because literally he had no job work at the moment. So the two of us got this course to market. We filmed it. It's actually been refilmed since then and rewritten. And that is what is called the Purpose Pursuit. That then was always in my heart. I wonder if this could be in book form, because not everybody's going to commit to a coaching program and a course, something that's available to people at low cost, easy access for anybody and everybody. So that's the journey to where we got to. And it came about really through the fact that I was having my own questions around what's next. And so were so many people. And I thought, I might have something to add to this conversation from my experiences and the work that I do.
Brilliant. Well, as I say, I was lucky enough to get an advanced copy of the book, and actually I have to give a little shout out as well to my lovely friend Jo, who, in a beautiful piece of serendipity, ended up, I think, copy editing your book.
That is unbelievable. And she messaged me. I didn't know Jo, and she messaged me on Instagram and said, "I've just been doing the final proofreading for your book," and that was just such a lovely. How lovely that you guys had that conversation. Oh, I just can't believe that.
What are the chances? But
I don't know.
But yeah, no, that was a lovely little
amazing
glimmer from the universe.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's, if we can, obviously we don't want to give away all your secrets, because we want people to buy your brilliant book.
Yes, please.
So let's maybe just kind of tease out a few little bits that kind of give people a flavour of it. So, you've already talked a bit about strengths. People may or may not have kind of done some work. Maybe they've had some kind of exercising, profiling kind of in their place of work, or at some point over the years, they might have kind of touched on that. But how have you kind of approached it in the book, and
In the book,
how can people, if they've never really thought deeply about what their strengths are and how to kind of leverage those, where do you sort of get people to start thinking about that?
Yeah. So as I said before, my approach when I work with anybody is we want to discover what's best about you, what's right about you, rather than looking at all of your weaknesses and your weak spots as a starting place. And actually, as I talk about in the book, the things that are your strengths can often be your point of challenge as well. And I know we'll probably talk about that too in a minute. So there are so many brilliant things out there. There are so many deep tools that you can use. And like you say, some people will have used them at work. The one that I use at work is Clifton Strengths. But for the purposes of the book, I wanted there to be a strengths-based element that was achievable, doable, but had enough rigor about it to actually be more than just a little 5-question quiz. So within the book, I have created a bit of a question, as you know from having looked at it yourself. There's kind of a strengths type exercise in there, which is quite important because it acts as a bit of a foundation piece for some of the other exercises later in the book. And what I've gone for is it's the 7 types that you end up with, which are sort of like broadly based on some of the things I've learned through the different profiling tools I've used, but I've narrowed them into something usable and sort of user friendly for a book that's not too complex.
Not so overwhelming as kind of like this whole universe of...
Yeah. And when you do the quiz, you'll then see that there are personality types that I then kind of give them a paragraph. They're called the achiever, the thinker, the connector, the impactor, the believer, and the explorer. And when you do that process in the book, I encourage people to think about their top 3 types and to take those 3 types with them through the exercises that they do in the book.
Right. So people might be a combination of...
Yeah, we're definitely more than just one thing. So, if you are an achiever and a thinker, that looks quite different to being achiever and believer. So I'm trying to help people see that, that blend and nuance that makes us who we are.
Yeah. And you might lean more towards one in a work context and more towards one in a personal context, for example.
That's right. That's definitely right. And, it's not sort of gospel level depth of, truthfulness in here. It's something that acts as a good tool for people to explore this concept for themselves in a way that can be meaningful and help them understand, therefore, why certain things give them what they need and energize them. Because this is a lot about understanding energy givers and energy drainers. And when we know our strengths, we can start to see, well, that's why I love it and I come alive in that situation. And other people, it's more draining, and it's much more nuanced than just saying I'm extrovert, I'm introvert, I think I do. There's much more to us than that, and I'm trying to lean into that a little bit more as this idea of this is a true strength within you that actually you may be taking for granted because you think everybody can do that, and actually they can't, and it's important for you to recognize that that's a gift for the world.
Yeah. And also something that I guess 2 things, like you might think that other people can see that in a work context, for example, but I think particularly as women, we're not great at kind of shouting about our kind of achievements or our kind of strengths and making that kind of visible. So I think being more aware of that and understanding it is a good first step to then going, hey, I'm really good at these things. Can I, do more of those things within my role, or can you help me kind of build on that and keep developing?
And do you know what, Emma? I was with a group yesterday of leaders. They were CEOs. Okay, so these people are all the most senior in their organisation, about 10 of them, all probably midlife, 3 or 4 women in there, and the rest were men. So there's, sort of a 40-60 split. And one of the women in the room, she sat there, and bear in mind, she's successful on that level of actually she has got a lot of responsibility. And she said, I've looked at my strengths today, and I've had a real sense of personal light bulb that I've been seeing these things as not strengths, and I should be more this and I should be more that, but actually this is what makes me the kind of leader that I am, and I don't have to try and be a leader like this. But it was like a really lovely moment of confidence giving to somebody who has perhaps found herself in a very senior position and thought, I should be more this, I should be more direct, when actually the way she leads is very collaborative, very practical, very drama free. And she started to recognise and see that as so much more of a strength than she had before. And the reason I tell that story is we can often assume that people who've had quite a lot of success in the workplace don't have those wobbles or those self-reflections. And she definitely left the room feeling a couple of inches taller than when she came in, which was a really nice outcome for me.
Lovely.
And for her, more importantly.
And yeah, it's never too late to kind of figure out what your kind of strengths are and how to play to them. Let's kind of tip it over then, because you've already alluded to this sort of, how if we sort of, our strengths can actually kind of work against us sometimes. And I was thinking a little bit about this actually this morning, thinking, having done the Clifton Strengths Assessment fairly recently, and kind of really realised, I'm going to talk about myself for a bit here, guys.
Yes, do, please.
Indulge me. But really, really kind of understanding how much a sort of love of learning kind of, as you say, like really, really lights me up, and not like almost nothing more than kind of learning new things, whether it's reading, listening to podcasts, kind of going down a rabbit hole. But for me, if I do too much of that will just hoover up all the available kind of time, and I need to be focusing some of that time on my business. So unfettered, I will literally go and like read every book, listen to every podcast, read all the research articles, kind of go down that rabbit hole ad infinitum, and then kind of look up 2 hours later and go, I was supposed to be doing some business development this morning.
That's a very good example.
But so what are some of the other examples that you kind of talk about in the book that people might recognise in themselves?
So when you did the book, did you come out with explorer or thinker as one of your types?
Yeah, I think those were the kind of the two strongest ones for me.
Okay. Good. I'm glad that happened, because that means it was a good fit. So what I talk about in the book and what I talk about in my workshops and anything is that there are things that we have which are weaknesses and things that we might not find very easy. We need to understand those, but actually there is a whole other dimension, which is the thing that we are good at or great at or enjoy or want to do more of. Left unfettered, to use what you said, left to our own devices, left without boundary or guidance or self-awareness, can also not be good for us. Sometimes it's not good for others, but also not good for us. And one of the challenges in the book is that sometimes burnout's partly us, and we have to understand and own what within us has contributed to that. So if you are somebody who loves to be hardworking and to achieve and to be busy and you're productive, you could sometimes find that affects you by pushing you to being without boundary with work, and you're working all hours and you don't know how to rest, for example. It might also be that you've got a strength like, I'm just finding my page here, you're a very real relationship builder and you love to do things for other people. You love to make them feel good, and you like to make them feel, you like to be liked, and you like to like others. By the way, there's nothing wrong with that. Wanting to please people, when did we decide that was bad? It's nice to please someone. The problem is when it becomes something that leaves you so depleted that you don't exercise your own right to your own feelings or the things that that you want, and you're so conflict avoiding perhaps that you don't say what you feel. If you're somebody who is deeply passionate about what you do and you're so values driven that you do the things because they matter to you, again, that can push you to work to exhaustion because the causes you believe in feel so strong that you can never switch off from them. So when you learn more about your strengths, you can also learn about what this overdrive can feel like, very much like your own story, Emma, that your own ability to think or to learn could mean you're spending too much time in the curious mode, and then you don't get down to what you want to get done. Some people struggle to come to decisions or to switch their brain off, perhaps because it's always on the go and going 100 miles an hour. And what we need to learn to do over our lives is recognize that these are my tendencies. They're a bit of an Achilles heel for me. This is going to be me forever. I don't expect to not be those things. But what can I do to make 10% improvements in this area? How can I help myself? How can I show some kindness to myself? How can I use my strengths with boundary and with realistic understanding that I need to? I try and give the analogy that if you're driving a car, I actually drive an automatic, but pretend I've got a gear stick for a minute. Your strengths are like the gears that you select in different situations as and when you need them. I should be driving the car and selecting the gear. The problem comes when we're no longer, it's like a self-driving car and we're not in charge of how they're being used in our life. We need to take responsibility and autonomy, and select the right gear at the right time. Being an achiever is great, but if you're in that gear all the time, every day, every hour, that's not good for you or the people around you either that you care about. So the process in the book gives people a bit more structure around understanding why some things might be more difficult for you than someone else. You and I will have different tendencies to self-sabotage or get in our own way, and knowing what they are means we can begin to identify ways through.
Yeah, you talked a little bit about values there, and I really liked your kind of walk talk framework that you put in to kind of help people understand how those impact on us. So I don't know, can we explain that in sort of 5 minutes or less?
I reckon I can. The simple point is, again, another factor in the book and in the process of working with me is a deep understanding of your own values. That it became almost so popular to talk about values that it started to lose its meaning. And I wanted to bring it back because there are so many great values out there, but you can't live by them all. They can all be good things in your life, but you have to choose what your priorities are. Brené Brown, when she talks about values, she says you should have no more than 3. I give people the opportunity to pick 5 because I'm being a little bit kinder.
Oh, generous.
But actually, the idea that this all comes from this concept that if everything is a priority, nothing's a priority. If I say that adventure, curiosity, friendship, love, listening, financial security, risk taking, if they're all my values, I can't
mix, isn't it? It's like if you have something from everything.
And there's a lot of really good wisdom about actually some of the things that sort of interest us or a sort of values can actually be the most dangerous in terms of pulling us away from really living our most important values. So people go through a process of thinking about their values and ascertaining them. And then one of the things I wanted to help people do is to think, well, how well am I actually living them out? And that's the walk talk axis. So if you're listening, if you can imagine like one of these 4-way quadrants that you see in books, and walk is one of the axes and talk is the other. So if you have got low talk and low walk, that means you are disconnected from your value. So you would take each value at a time and think about it like this. So let's say my value is adventure. And is adventure low walk and low talk? That means I don't really tell anybody that adventure is my value. My family don't know this about me. And nothing about my life suggests that there's any adventure in it. You would say that I am disconnected from that value.
I'm probably quite frustrated
and
unfulfilled.
Exactly that. You come to a realization of that's why this feels difficult, because this part of me I'm not representing. Then there's another part which is still low walk, but this is high talk, and I called that loud but lost. So this is somebody that talks all about it and says, I love adventure and adventure is so me. Talk's a good game, and people look on and go, yeah, okay, but do you do that? When somebody says, I love learning, I'm so curious, and they've not read anything, listened to anything, and they're not really living out that thing that they are articulating. It's loud and they know it, but it's not actually lived and it's a bit lost in their life. The next one is to be high walk, but low talk. That actually is called quiet integrity. So people may not know this is a value of yours. You may not be articulating it or allowing other people on the journey, but you are living by that value. You are prioritizing, perhaps, let's say work-life balance is something that you're trying to do. You're prioritizing that and doing it, but you're not really giving the opportunity for others to see this great example because there isn't a lot of articulation around it. Perhaps you're being hesitant because of humility or maybe a fear of being judged by others. So high walk, low talk is another one. And then, of course, we've got high walk and high talk. And that is when I've called that aligned and authentic. So that means you talk about this thing and you live out this thing. So you talk about adventure and you're having adventure. Again, in every life phase, adventure looks different. Just using that value as an example, it doesn't mean you have to be going to Peru to be having an adventurous lifestyle. It could be just the way you're choosing to spend some of your free time doing new things, trying things out, going places you've not been before, experimenting. And that could be what that aligned and authentic looks like. But for every value, that's where we want to get to, really, is to be aligned and authentic, or perhaps the quiet integrity. I have also included something called the messy middle because for some of us, we just I'm not quite sure where I'm at, and it might feel like that represents,
that's the name of my Substack. So I definitely identify with that.
That's it. There is a messy middle in there as well. So for one of the values, but what I encourage people to do is to take those 5 values that they've come up with, and to think about them on that axis. There might be some values that they think, I'm actually really aligned and authentic. I really do this. And there might be another value where they, like a woman I worked with, who one of her values was family. And she felt compromised in 2 ways. One, she felt her children were little and she was missing too many bedtimes for her liking. And the other was she was actually from another country and she felt like her actual family were really far away. So there was a smaller problem, which she actually adjusted her hours and she managed to get more time with her children. And then there was a bigger issue, which about 18 months later, they moved as a family back to the country that she was from. And the values exercise was the beginning of that process. It literally started to turn the ship around. And that's why these things are important. It's not that they're magic, but if you don't do the process, you can't see how to get back on track. So it diagnoses it. And that woman, I was amazed when she told me the direction of travel through certain conversations with her husband, decisions they made. Their life started to get more and more aligned and authentic to the one that she wanted. And absolute, kudos to her for making those decisions, because she knew it wasn't going to happen overnight, but they got there and they got to living the life that felt more aligned with her values, even if it meant to have to sacrifice other things like some of their finance and so on and so forth.
And I think
that's the axis.
Yeah, that's an important point, isn't it? That actually this is sort of part of what could be a fairly long process of things kind of settling into where they need to be. And it might be that first step on, like you say, it could be an 18-month or longer kind of journey of actually kind of getting to where you want to be. But until you've asked yourself those difficult questions, how do you know where you're looking,
want to go? And I'm sure you find this in the work that you're doing, that it's so easy for people to decry those small shifts and see them as not worth it, but actually small shifts over time build up and start to, if you think about a cruise liner, if it moves a degree in another direction, it's going to end up over time moving closer to the destination. And I think many of us can despise doing a small change because we think it's not really going to make any difference. But for example, 5-minute stretching every day for a year will make a difference to your body in 365 days. And any of those similar examples for your values will over time have put a deposit in the bank towards the direction of life that you want to be living. And I know for me, I can often despise those small things. I think it's not going to make a difference. But actually, those little decisions do get us closer to where we want to be. That email you send, that person you talk to, that conversation you have, the choice of how you spend your time, all begin to put deposits in the bank towards, where you want to be.
And I should say as well, because obviously I feel like we could go on and kind of pull out stuff from the book, but the way that you've written it will guide the person reading it through this kind of logical process of it may be the kind of thing that you would do over a kind of period of time, depending on what else is going on in your life.
Yes.
Lost my train of thought. but there are kind of other exercises other than the ones that we've talked about in there that will kind of get them from A to B and kind of hopefully at the end of it arrive with a much kind of clearer sense of creating that roadmap for whatever it is that they might want to change.
Absolutely.
Or they might figure out that actually there's nothing they want to change.
And that's good too.
Aligned with where they want to be.
And it's meant to act like you say, a bit of a companion to help you coach yourself through what you to where you want to get to. That is essentially the point of it. It gives you exercises and also makes you perhaps more helpful to friends in your life who might need this kind of help. Gives you some tools and questions you can ask them. Those of us who are in the midlife moment, it's a real time where we can feel a bit disorientated. We can have lost our confidence. It's a massive opportunity for another exciting phase. But the number, even just talking to my sister Emma the other day, who is currently really in the throes of perimenopause, she's my big sister, and she said to me, Hannah, I've really lost a lot of confidence in this process.
Oh, it's so common.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she's externally a bubbly, capable, confident person, but she said it's definitely knocked me. And I think the process of this book, if you're listening in that phase, is that it gives you like an arm around the shoulder of actually, these are the things that make you uniquely you and you're great at. And this is how you can use those again in the next phase of your life. And transition moments are so destabilizing, and midlife is absolutely one of those. And I want people to see that as a chance to build something really great from it, and not a chance to not just a period of loss and letting go. It's also a time for really exciting new things to come from that. You have so much life experience and wisdom to bring to the table that for some reason we are not recognizing is really important.
Well, Hannah, thank you so much. I do heartily recommend that if you're having a bit of a soul searching time, that you rush out and get yourself a copy of this and work your way through it in your own time. Maybe even do it with a friend. Hannah, where can people find you online?
So the best place to find me is probably on Instagram, and I'm Hello Hannah Miller on Instagram. My website is called hellosidekick.co, and the book is called The Purpose Pursuit by Hannah Miller. I'm sure Emma will provide you with the links to that. You can buy it any bookshop. That it's out on the 4th of December, but is available for pre-order from before then. So it's a great Christmas present too, as well as for yourself. There might be someone in your life who is feeling a bit stuck, and it's a kind present because it's a present that will kind of, like I said, put an arm around them and help them see what they have to offer.
Brilliant. So Hannah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed reading the book.
Thank you so much, Emma.
Thanks for listening to the Middling Along podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please go and leave us a review over at Apple Podcasts. You can check out the full back catalogue of all our episodes over at midlingalong.com. You can also find out more about my work as a coach. Go to www.thetripleshift.org.